And I had to work with them through that process, and it wasn't always fun because the families weren't always on board with the transfer. But eventually, things work out, and we were able to obtain the funds. So that does happen, where sometimes if you leave a beneficiary on one of your accounts, it can be kind of contentious after, but it is worth it in the end. I've also had older women call me in particular who know that their sons or daughters don't like the way that they manage their money, and they'll hide it, and it's so interesting. And like Janet mentioned, not all families get along, and sometimes you can really see it. So one of the things that one of these people asked me once was, can I do something before I die? And the answer to that question is yes, you can. So if you know that you want to give something away, and you know you don't need it, even before you die, then why not make it easier for your kids or your family or whoever's going to manage things for you afterwards, and do it ahead of time. So I would just consider that as an option. One of those conversations involves stock. Her family didn't know that she owned a lot of expensive stock. And she said, if I give this away, am I going to get a big tax bill? And I said, no, I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty much sure that if you talk to an attorney, as long as you're not obtaining the capital gains on your taxes, you can share that with someone else, meaning diocese or their school. I think that was a parish actually, and you can avoid some taxes. Sometimes people are afraid to give things away because they think their taxes are going to be affected. If you check with an accountant, sometimes that's not the case at all. It actually might be to your benefit. So before you decide on that, talk to someone so you know the right answer. Another option is the charitable gift annuity. So we have these at the Catholic Foundation for the diocese. We manage them for a number of people throughout the diocese. But what it is basically, in a nutshell, I've got all this cash sitting here. I don't need all this cash right now, but I sure could use some bits of it here and there to help me pay my bills. I really don't think I'm going to give this cash away to my family. I'd really like to give it to my parish. So what you can do is you can put that into what's called a charitable gift annuity, and that annuity holds on to the money. And over time, over certain periods of time, you get distributions. So right now, depending on your age, and the percent of the distribution is dependent on your age, these percent distributions are very generous right now. You can look at these up online through the Association of Charitable Gift Annuities or something like that. It's ACGA. I forget exactly what it's called, but they set the rates. So you can end up with a check for 6% of what you put in there originally as your spending money, basically. And then when you die, that amount that's being held in that account automatically goes to the parish or to the school or to the diocese, and you don't have to do anything, and your kids don't have to do anything because you set it up before you passed away. So there are interesting options like this that attorneys can really walk you through really well. Another thing would be donor advised funds. We haven't talked about this at all yet tonight, but I have seen this become one of the more popular ways that people who have particular wealth are using to give gifts. So what I mean by that is donor advised funds, you can get a tax deduction in the year that you put the money in this fund. And then the financial institution holds on to that money, and it isn't really yours because you got the whole tax deduction the year you put it in there. But you can recommend that the financial institution gives part of it away, or all of it away, to whatever place you want it to go to. They call those distributions or grants. And so you can set those up before you pass away, and you can also attach beneficiaries to them. So you can get a tax benefit sometimes, depending on your situation, but check with an accountant on how you can do that for yourself. If you were to decide to do a bequest in a will, I had 3 different types of wording back on the table. One is a specific bequest, and somebody mentioned this before, but it's a specific dollar amount or a specific thing that would go to a specific person or entity or organization. A residuary, so that's once you're all done paying all my bills, whatever's left would then go to this place or this person or entity. And then contingent, if none of these people that I thought wanted my money, would want it, don't want it, or whatever, or they're not alive anymore either, then this is where I'd like it to go to instead. So you can look at these wordings in the back, and they're applicable to the diocese, they're applicable to your parish, they'd be applicable to a school. All you need is the legal name in the EIN number, and someone mentioned EIN numbers. If you do decide to give something in your will or as a beneficiary or a bequest to a school, parish, diocese, anything with the word Catholic that's legitimate, there is in the diocese, not like nationally. The bishop has a society to thank people for their generosity, and it's called the Perpetual Light Society. And sometimes people don't want anything to do with it because they just want to give, and that's just what they want to do, which is fine. But there are those of us who are extremely appreciative of generosity on the part of other people. And while you're alive, we want to make sure to say thank you to you if we know that you've taken this step. Because once you're gone, you're really hard to say thank you to. I can't think of anything else right now, but if you have questions, I'm happy to take them, or I'll be back there. Oh, and I did have one question from someone ahead of us, and that is, if I leave money to the parish, does that mean it goes to the diocese? Well, technically the parish is part of the diocese, so I guess part of the answer is yes, but also technically the parish has its own EIN number, so it would go to the parish. So if you don't like the diocese, that's okay. You can still give it to the parish. We'll still love you. Okay.
Okay, we will now have Lydia Johnson, parishioner, and she's going to talk about funeral planning at the parish level. And just as a side note, we do have the parish EIN number. If you would like to leave something to the parish, we can get you those copies so you'll have the exact wording, name, all that good stuff.
And now Terry's going to get the thing going. So that, because one of the things that we need to use is our parish website. It has just a phenomenal amount of information on it. And as soon as she brings it up, we'll okay. So on the very top, no, not the very top, this line. Okay, and what's that word they're looking for?
Rites and sacraments.
Rites and sacraments. Okay, there'll be a drop-down menu. And when you go to that, you click on funerals. And there it has all of the information about funerals. So it's talking about choices that it could be the person's own funeral if you're planning it ahead of time yourself, or it could be for the family. Terry did a little sheet that I have a bunch of them over there that has information on it. One of the things that I know that I have experienced in taking communion to people where homebound, where someone was dying, and we talked about and the readings from the New Testament that we can choose, because the family can choose those two readings. They are beautiful, beautiful readings. And personally, I think that if you can share them with the person that is dying, they can bring just incredible comfort. So it's one of the things, and there's kind of a lot of them. I can't remember how many, but there's really kind of a lot of readings. So those are things that you can look at and think about well ahead of time. And things, you know, my family, my children would say, well, Mom, I know you're going to have your funeral because I'm such a control freak that I want to make sure it's like I want it. But that does give you the option that you can go ahead and you can choose the readings that you want. Okay. Usually, the priest or the person in charge of the funeral will choose the gospel reading. Now, a lot of times we have the petitions, but you know, the deacon or the priest has been doing the petitions. Would that be at a funeral too, Deacon Mike?
Yes. They've added petitions, yeah, the family will sometimes.
So the family could do them?
Yeah, some families don't want to be involved with it.
Right.
They say you do them.
Okay, so that really is up to
Yeah.
the situation. So the other thing that's a big thing is music. On the website, there's a whole list of songs that are suggested for all of the appropriate places. One of the things that you have to remember is we don't use popular music. We don't use pop songs at all. Secular music. So, and there's a pretty hefty list there. But I also think that if you talked about if they're in the green book or the black book, that they're probably going to be okay. But it's one of the things that you would check with someone for sure about it. The other thing is some kind of a eulogy. We don't do that during the Mass because the Mass is a sacred time. Usually it's acceptable that if you have a family member that wants to talk about the person, that it's very acceptable to have a short, 3 to 5 minute kind of what we would classify as a eulogy at the end of the Mass. So the other thing that we needed to talk about, Terry has a really good one.
I'm a control freak as well.
This one, you can get, and Terry's got the information, and it's a whole bunch of papers that you can fill out so that you can have all of your information available for your family. This one is online for $12. I have one that's not nearly as good, but it was only 96 cents. But it's not as good. I mean, it truly is not as good. But these kind of things can just make it really so much easier for you to have this information. Now, I know because I'm old, we have a filing cabinet at our house. My children think that's the most archaic and ridiculous thing in the world. Why would you ever bother with that? All of my information is in that filing cabinet. But if I have this binder there, it's really easy for people to find all of that information. So that we would highly encourage that. The other thing that we do, that I'm connected with a lot, is with St. Anne's. And St. Anne's at this parish, and at this time, we provide lunch service. I personally think it is one of the most beautiful things that we can do. It gives the family an opportunity to have some time, special time with family and friends. And it's a really good thing for families. So.
I was going to ask Lydia, so Terry has those booklets right there?
No, the information is in here, the
How to
website.
order one, or?
Yeah, the website that you can get it on.
So, like my wife and I, we would each have a booklet, right?
No, you'd have one for your family.
Oh, one? Oh,
Yeah, you don't have to buy two.
Okay,
And all this is you buy the rights to the PDF file,
okay.
so then you print it out yourself
Okay.
at home.
So you fill it in and put it in there.
Yep, yep,
So where do you get the information to do all that?
on your head.
The format or wherever you got that from.
Oh, well, this one is from
I think it's Clementine Creative.
ClementineCreativeShop.com.
Okay,
Right, and mine was on Etsy, you know, and it basically is the same, but this one is a little bit, I don't know, I just think it's a little bit better. You know, and I know that when I go to do it, I will make some variations. One of the things in both of them is a whole list of medications. Yeah, well, I'm not gonna put that in the filing cabinet. That needs to be on the inside of that cabinet door where all the pills are. You know, so that it's easy for someone to find. You know, but this is a great start, a way of organizing all of the things that you need to have. Other questions? Yes,
I have a comment more than a question. But I think it'd be a good idea to have a little book or a place with all your passwords to every website that you have to get into.
That's in there.
For your finances, for everything.
yep,
In one
and
place.
there's pages in there.
You'd be
Personally,
in trouble.
I have an address book from the dollar store that, oh, God, I thought I lost it one time. It's like scary, because I can't remember anything, and there's, you know, everything needs a name and a password, you know, and then you have to change the password, and then you have to change it again, you know, so it's like, yeah. My address book is real important. Other questions? Jerry ran off a bunch of these sheets, so please help yourself to one.
Okay, next, Jack Walsh, parishioner. He's going to talk about St. Mary's and St. Patrick's cemeteries.
Right from here.
Right from there he is. Okay.
Please.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, I've got a complete sheet of costs for the cemetery here. As far as whether you buy a niche in the columbarium, whether you're buried in ground, and there's two ways of being buried. One in ground, some people, the two of them, one will be a regular burial, and the next one will want to be cremated, and we've got place for that. We've got cremations in the ground, we got cremations in the columbarium. The columbariums, I've got two niches in the old columbarium left for $750, and the new columbarium's $900. We got locating fees when we have to open the columbarium. We got locating fees for opening and closing, and that money usually is charged to you by the undertaker. And we've got problems with infants. If we have an infant burial, it's less than a regular adult burial. We've got fees for funerals, as far as church fees, priest fees, organist fees, choirs, soloists, altar servers. Got a place to show you what etching costs on the columbarium for putting the addresses and or information on the deaths at that. And then on the monuments, you buy your monument separate from the cemetery, and then we show the monument person where to locate the monument. And we usually try and work with the people as far as helping them locate where to get a monument. Usually the funeral director has places to get the monument, either from themselves or from somebody else. So if anybody wants to make a appointment with me or Ken Gibler or Tom Walsh or Craig Bartelt to look at the map and make a decision on buying a grave, just let me know and we'll set up a meeting to go to the Parish Center and get the map out and take you up the cemetery and show you where you would be buried, and you could tell us that information. We'll put it on the card so that when somebody passes, we know exactly what to do and where you're going to go. And then after a person passes, we go up and locate the grave, and then a member of the family has to go up there and look at the flags and come back and sign a piece of paper from the state of Illinois that says they're being buried in the right place. Because years ago, Chicago had issues where they pulled people out of the ground and resold the graves and buried people on top of each other, and it was a mess. So now the state regulates it, so you don't have that problem. So the information is right here. If you want to stop afterwards and get a copy of it, we'd be glad to work with you on selling graves. Any questions?
Irish Grove.
Irish Grove is the same information as Duran. Pat Flynn is not here tonight, but you would contact him for looking at the flag or at the map for Irish Grove.
Okay, and now we will have Pat Hazen from Fitzgerald's Funeral Home in Rockford.
This is something that we feel very passionate about at Fitzgerald's. As you heard all the different speakers talk about it, you can see there's a lot of moving parts. And it's something that when you do it ahead of time, you make much better decisions. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to share that information with you. In our Catholic faith, and often during Lent, the Church encourages us to reflect upon memento mori, which translates to remember your death. Memento mori is a reminder of the certainty and the inescapability of death. It's not intended to be morbid, but to clarify and illuminate and inspire us to live better lives. In religious art, memento mori is often symbolized through iconography of skulls or hourglasses or wilted flowers, which are used to visually represent the transience of life. So for more than 110 years, Fitzgerald has cared for families on one of the worst days of their life. And we consider that a great honor. And as Deacon Mike explained, that's one of the corporal works of mercies. It's not one that people think of right away. They think about the food banks, winter clothing drives, the shelters for the homeless, visiting the sick. The last one is often forgotten, to bury the dead, which is to ensure that those who have passed are always treated with dignity through proper burial. So we assist families saying goodbye to their loved ones. One of the closing blessings during the funeral mass is, may our farewell express our affection for them. May it ease our sadness and strengthen our hope. That one day we will joyfully greet them again. We have to remember that we're just pilgrims here. And as Deacon Mike said, we're made for heaven. But people forget about that and they get caught up in the daily grind of life. Your family, and if you have children, want to honor you. But because death is a taboo subject, nobody wants to talk about it. There's a lot of beliefs that people think if they talk about it, it's gonna cause it to happen. And the truth is, it's gonna happen if we talk about it or not. It's the one thing that we all share in common. So making plans in advance is one of the kindest and greatest gifts that you can give to your family. What we also know is that by planning ahead of time, and this is important, is that it prevents emotional overspending. Most of the families that come to us the day after they've lost a loved one. People are unprepared and overwhelmed for what they have to do on that day. I've been doing this for about 12 years. When I meet with families, it takes about an hour, hour and a half, depending on how many questions you have. But on that day, you're gonna have to sit with the funeral director, and everything has to be decided. Because in a few days, you're gonna have the funeral. So it's much easier to plan ahead of time. Planning ahead comes in two parts. One is deciding everything you'd like to do. And if a funeral mass is important to you, it's important that you let your wishes be known. Because we live in a drive-through disposable world, and there's a lot of people we all know that don't understand our faith or don't practice their faith anymore. And they make bad decisions when that day comes along, and they don't honor what their loved one has represented and lived their whole life. The second part of pre-planning is deciding if you want to pre-fund it. You don't have to do that, but the advantage of doing that is that it locks in the price so it doesn't continue to escalate with the cost of living increases. In the state of Illinois, and most states follow this rule, funeral homes aren't allowed to hold on to the money. So what they do is they put it into a funeral insurance policy. And then at the time of passing, all of that is taken care of in background. And it prevents all those hardships of all the different scenarios that were being talked about. Because a lot of times people have not thought about, nor have they set aside any money for the funding of that funeral. And when you look at a funeral, it's probably in the top 20 major expenses you have in your life. When you look at buying a home, buying a car, putting the kids through school, going on vacation, a funeral's right up there. And a lot of times, when people don't plan for it, you'll see them do a GoFundMe or have a chicken dinner trying to raise enough money. And it just puts a lot of pressure on the family on one of the hardest days of their life. The most important thing that I can share with you, and if you remember nothing else about what I said, please remember this, is that if you make pre-plans and if you pre-fund it, that belongs to you. It does not belong to the funeral home. So you can at any time move that. If you did it with us right now, it would be assigned. That's a legal term, assigned to Fitzgerald's. But many times after the first spouse passes, the surviving spouse may live another 8 or 10 years, and at the end of their life, they may end up in a nursing home or a hospital or a hospice center, and they move close to their children. So they'll move their plans there as well. We do that all the time. Many times they may have a service there, and then they'll get transferred back here because their cemetery property is here. So there's a lot of different variations. There's no one size fits all. But please understand that it is portable and it belongs to you. One of the things we do offer all the families, and it's free, is a guide like was discussed earlier. It's called the Personal Wish Organizer. It's 18 pages. It's a wonderful booklet. You go through it and you fill out exactly what's important to you because everybody has different plans. But all those moving parts, the music, the flowers, the readings, what you'd like to be laid out in, the clothing, all those things. There's probably easily 40 to 60 different questions that have to be answered. And that's what overwhelms people in the time of their passing. So I have a brochure that I can also give you that talks about all the different things. It's called Give Me One Good Reason. And we took time to sit down and write them all out. It turns out there's 104 pieces of information that are needed. So leading that to your children, your spouse. If you're married, you've probably done most things together. but there are many times when people come in and they've made no arrangements. It's a very difficult time. So if you'd like one of these, you can fill out a form back there and I'll make sure you receive a copy. There's actually a whole folder of information because there's a lot of information to include, and that's free. I'd be glad to sit down with you at any time and go through that. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just have a few closing remarks. They kind of got where we are here tonight. So this past October, my sister's stepson, 26 years old, lived out of state, tragically passed away. At 26, you're not thinking about any of this. So he passed away, no estate planning, no password book where they could find to get into his laptop to find his account information. With all this being said, now they're dealing with the loss of their son, out of state probate. It's tragic and it was a mess. So that prompted me to think about that book that Lydia showed. That, along with my daughter saying after this happened, "Hey Mom, do your sisters know what to do to help Grandma if you should die before her?" I'm like, nope, I don't think they do. So that book started me thinking, what about my passwords? What about my online banking information? Do they know where I bank? Do they have, when I die, will they know what to do? So I'm in the middle of 3 of those binders, one for me, one for my husband, and one for my mom. And it's very thorough, and it comes up with a lot of things that I wouldn't think, and there's some things that don't pertain to me, like pets. I don't have any pets, but for somebody who has pets, that might be a consideration. Especially if you have those birds that live forever, and they're out with you. Something to think about. Okay, so building on what Pat said, we're coming on 11 years when my dad passed away. My dad was struggling, he was sick, but we didn't expect him to pass because we didn't. We were thrown into planning his funeral. Mom and I had never planned a funeral, and it was torturous for an hour and a half, sitting down, coming up with what casket should look like. Does he need the satin ribbons, or does he need silk? These were the things at that point we didn't want to discuss. What clothes are we going to put him in? And I think there may have been talk about we should have Dad go commando. I mean, there's things like that, but it was so much, and it was really, we just wanted to grieve, and we couldn't because we had to do all this planning. So I think I gave my mom like 6 months after Dad passed, and I said, you know what, Mom, you and I need to plan our funerals. Because when she's gone, who am I going to look to about her life growing up? What charities would you like donations to instead of flowers? Because we don't need all these flowers that are going to die. Things like that to think about. So if I could offer each of you a bit of advice, just personal experience. It is a hard subject. My husband refuses to talk about it. But when he says things like, oh, I really like that song, that's a really pretty song. Okay, I put it on my little phone, on my note, that's a funeral song for him, he likes that song, and it works, So think about it, write something down, whether it's in a binder, in a notebook, make sure your information is there, and then let somebody know about it. My daughter, I tell her, I said, honey, here's my binder. Here's all my living trust stuff. Here's where the safe deposit key is. Everything's in there. I've got my funeral planned and all of that because I don't want them to have to deal with it because it is going to be a lot. Okay, I also wanted, let's see. Oh, one other thing. So I have some friends who were Catholic, their parents were Catholic, and their father passed away, and he was very Catholic, but he had Alzheimer's. So when he passed, everything was private funeral, everything. Well, not really a funeral, we're just gonna bury him in the ground. So everything was private at the funeral home, bury him into the ground, no funeral mass. And for me, when I look at that, and I think that is so sad, but what I did was I offered a mass for him. And I did that for my sister's stepson, offered a mass for him because that's the best prayer we can offer them if they're not having a funeral mass. And it's one way that we can show how much we love them and we want them to be in heaven with Jesus. Okay? I know we ran a little bit over, but I do want to thank all of you for coming, let you know there's still snacks, and let you know that if there's any information you would like, please visit the people at their tables. I believe over there by Jack and Lydia, there is also a paper that mimics what was in the November bulletin where it lists everybody's name here this evening, their contact information. So if you do have any questions that later might come up, please feel free to reach out and contact them. Oh, yes, Karen.
I noticed that your video,
Yes.
if someone's not here, but we would like them to watch this, how can they find the video too?
Okay, so what we will do is, it takes me a while, but I will upload it tomorrow to YouTube, and I'll probably put a link somewhere on the website. I can also send a Flock note out with the link in it, the YouTube link.
Good idea.
So that should help. We do have, like, I've been trying to record some of the masses here, and we've been recording some of Deacon's homilies, because sometimes he gives a good one, right? Once in a while. So there is a YouTube page, and it's just, there's been a lot of crazy around here lately, but I would like to put that in the bulletin so that people can access those anytime they want. So yeah, so I can't guarantee it'll be up there tomorrow, but hopefully by Monday I should have it up with a link, and then maybe put the instructions on how to access it in the bulletin.
One more thing, thank
Yes.
you so much for organizing this, has been very
Oh.
educational.